2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia to broaden our view of the universe through the Hubble Space Telescope.
Houston now controlling the flight of Columbia, the Pioneer shuttle headed for the Hubble Space Telescope.
Program. Roger, roll, Columbia.
Columbia into the roll, placing the shuttle in a heads-down, wings-level position for the 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 25 seconds into the flight, Columbia's 3 liquid fuel main engines now throttling back in a 3-step fashion to 72% of rated performance, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier. Already 2 miles in altitude, 1.5 miles downrange, leaving an incandescent trail behind it. Columbia headed for Hubble. Hubble almost directly over the Cape at this moment. 3 engines now throttling down, soon to throttle back up to 104% of rated performance. The main engines, along with the 3 fuel cells and 3 hydraulic power units, all functioning normally. Standing by.
Columbia, Houston, you are go at throttle up. Columbia copies, go at throttle up.
That throttle up call from Capcom Mark Polanski, acknowledged by Commander Scott Altman aboard Columbia. Altman joined on the flight deck by pilot Dwayne Carey, flight engineer Nancy Curry, and mission specialist John Grunsfeld. Rick Lenahan, Jim Newman, and Mike Massimino seated down on the middeck. Columbia tracking right down the pike, 15 miles in altitude, 11.5 miles downrange, heading due east from the Kennedy Space Center for an altitude of 350 statute miles in pursuit of Hubble. 1 minute, 45 seconds into the flight, about 15 seconds prior to solid rocket booster separation. Standing by for SRB separation. Booster officer confirms a good SRB separation. Guidance now converging. Columbia's onboard computers commanding the main engine nozzles to gently swivel.
Columbia, Houston, 2-engine bend. Houston, we copy, 2-engine bend.
That call from Capcom Mark Polanski indicates that if one engine should fail right now, Columbia could make a transoceanic abort to Ben Guerir, Morocco. However, as it climbs into dawn, Columbia right on the money, aiming the shuttle for a precise keyhole in space for main engine cutoff. Columbia traveling 3,400 miles per hour, 42 miles in altitude, 61 miles downrange from the Cape. Now flying on the singular power of its 3 liquid fuel main engines, Columbia and its engines draining 0.5 ton of fuel per second from the shuttle's large external fuel tank. Three minutes, 10 seconds into the flight, all of Columbia's systems functioning normally, Columbia returning to orbit for the first time since July 1999. Now 52 miles in altitude, 100 miles downrange from the Cape, Columbia, all of its systems continuing to function normally. Three good main engines, 3 good auxiliary power units, 3 good power-producing fuel cells for the oldest shuttle in the fleet, almost 21 years since its first flight.
Columbia, Houston, press to ATO, select band jewel. Houston, we copy, press to ATO, select and band jewel. Columbia, Houston, negative return. Houston, we copy, negative return.
Commander Scott Altman acknowledging that call from Capcom Mark Polanski, now 62 miles in altitude, 165 miles downrange. Columbia too far from the Kennedy Space Center to return to the launch site in the event of an engine failure. However, all of Columbia's systems continue to function perfectly at this moment. Columbia on course and on time to reach the Hubble Space Telescope early Sunday morning. 4.5 minutes into the flight, 64 miles in altitude, 205 miles downrange. The glimmer of Columbia's main engine still visible to spectators at the Kennedy Space Center. Columbia currently traveling at 6,500 miles per hour. At the time of main engine cutoff, around 8.5 minutes into the flight, Columbia will be traveling times.
Houston, press to MECO.
Houston, we copy. Press to MECO.
That call indicating that in the unlikely event of an engine failure, Columbia could make its normal main engine cutoff targets in orbit.
3.
We copy. Columbia, single engine ops 3.
At the time of main engine cutoff, around 3 minutes from now, Columbia will be traveling 25 times the speed of sound. 5.5 minutes into the flight, Columbia almost 70 miles in altitude, 315 miles downrange from the Cape.
Columbia, Houston, single engine Banjul 104.
Houston, we copy. Single engine Banjul 104.
That call indicating that transoceanic abort sites could be reached by Columbia in the event of a multiple engine failure. However, those engines continue to function by the book. 3 good power-producing fuel cells, 3 good hydraulic power units on Columbia as well. Columbia now traveling 10,000 miles per hour, 405 miles downrange from the Cape.
Columbia, Houston, single engine press 104.
Houston, Columbia, copy. Single engine press 104.
A smooth ride so far for the Pioneer shuttle as it returns to orbit. Guidance officer and mission control.
Columbia, Houston, your shutdown plan is nominal.
Houston, Columbia, we copy. Shutdown nominal plan and concur.
Main engine cutoff expected 8 minutes 24 seconds into the flight. Guidance officer reports that Columbia is right on track, right down the pike, heading for the Hubble Space Telescope. Columbia now gaining speed as it continues its flat dive towards orbit, about 13,000 miles per hour, 630 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. Almost 8 minutes into the flight, Columbia's main engines are again being throttled down to limit the stress on the shuttle and its crew members to that of 3 times the effective gravity. Again, Columbia will enter its preliminary orbit at a speed of about 5 miles a second, Mach 25. Standing by for main engine cutoff. Booster officer reports main engine cutoff. Columbia in its preliminary orbit, back in space for the first time in 2.5 years. Standing by for external tank jettison. And the large external fuel tank has been jettisoned.
Houston, nominal MECO, almost 1 is not required.
Houston, we concur. Plus X complete. Ohms engines coming off.
This is Mission Control Houston. Now 10 and a half minutes into the flight of Columbia on the first shuttle mission of the year, heading
T-minus 4 minutes and counting. We're in the process now of a final test of the flight control surfaces. This is a programmed pattern of movements designed to verify the readiness for launch of the engines and other flight control surfaces. And a final aerial surface check of the orbiter's wing elevons and rudder are being completed. This verifies the orbiter's hydraulic systems. And coming up next will be the 3 main engines. They'll be gimbaled in a final test before launch. T-minus 3 minutes and counting. And all is going well for launch this afternoon. Everything on board Endeavour looks good.
LO2 pressurization.
The gaseous oxygen vent hood will be slowly retracted away from the top of the external tank.
PLP OTC, clear caution warning memory, verify no one.
That will be coming up momentarily.
PLP in order.
T-minus 2 minutes, 30 seconds and counting.
OTC, PLP, caution and warning memory cleared, no unexpected errors. OTC copy.
Everything continues to look good and we are cleared for launch.
Close and lock your visors and issue. Endeavour copies. O2.
T-minus 2 minutes and counting.
VLS's go for LH2 pressurization.
All systems are go and we are just about 90 seconds from launch of Endeavour. T-minus 60 seconds and counting. The ground launch sequencer is verifying that the 3 main engines are ready to start. T-minus 45 seconds and counting. T-minus 30 seconds and counting, and we have a go for auto sequence start. Endeavour's onboard computers have primary control of all the vehicle's critical functions. T-minus 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. 12, 10, 9, 8. We have a go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, pushing our goals skyward using our station in space.
Houston now controlling the flight of Endeavour.
Roll program. Roger, roll, Endeavour.
Endeavour into the roll, placing the shuttle in a heads-down, wings level position, the proper azimuth for the 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 30 seconds into the flight, Endeavour's 3 liquid fuel main engines now throttling back in a 3-step fashion to 72% of rated performance, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier. Endeavour already 3 miles downrange, 4.5 miles in altitude, losing weight as it heads uphill.
Endeavour Houston, go at throttle up.
Endeavour copies, go at throttle up.
The throttle up call from Capcom Jim Kelly, acknowledged by Commander Dom Gorey aboard Endeavour. Gorey joined on the flight deck by pilot Mark Kelly, flight engineer Dan Tawney, and mission specialist Linda Godwin. The Expedition 4 crew, Russian Commander Yuri Anufrienko and American flight engineers Dan Bursch and Carl Wall seated down on the middeck. Endeavour now 10 miles downrange, 14 miles in altitude, traveling at about 2,500 miles per hour. Everything looking very good. 3 good auxiliary power units, 3 good fuel cells, all of Endeavour's systems in excellent shape. Standing by for solid rocket booster separation. Booster officer reports good solid rocket booster separation, 33 miles downrange, 31 miles in altitude, guidance now converging, Endeavour's onboard computers commanding the main engine nozzles to gently swivel, aiming the shuttle for a precise keyhole in space for main engine cutoff.
Endeavour Houston, 2-engine Maroon.
Endeavour copies, 2-engine Maroon.
That call from Capcom Jim Kelly indicating that if one main engine would fail at the moment, Endeavour could still reach its transoceanic abort site at Morón, Spain. However, Endeavour flying smoothly on the singular power of its 3 liquid fuel main engines, those engines draining about 1/2 ton of fuel per second from the shuttle's large external fuel tank. 2 minutes, 55 seconds into the flight. Endeavour 47 miles in altitude, 73 miles downrange, all systems in excellent shape. Endeavour on course and on time, the chase underway to reach the International Space Station Friday afternoon. Endeavour setting sail 3 years and 1 day after it was launched on the first ISS assembly flight. Good flash evaporator system reported, providing cooling for the orbiter's avionics until payload bay door opening about an hour and a half into the flight. 3 minutes, 40 seconds into the mission, Endeavour coming up on the point of negative return, where the shuttle will be too far downrange, too high in altitude to return to the launch site in the event of an engine failure.
Endeavour Houston, negative return.
Endeavour's negative return.
Endeavour and its 7 crew members now 153 miles downrange, 62 miles in altitude, heading up the eastern seaboard. At the time of launch, the International Space Station was flying over the Arabian Sea just west of the southern coast of India. Endeavour tracking right down the pike for main engine cutoff at about the 8.5 minute mark. Endeavour now 230 miles downrange, 67 miles in altitude, beginning to gain speed.
Endeavour Houston, press to ATO, select Zaragoza.
Endeavour is pressed ATO, will select Zaragoza.
That call from Capcom Jim Kelly indicating that Endeavour could make minimal orbital altitude cutoff targets in the event of an engine failure. However, Endeavour's 3 main engines and all of its other systems performing by the book. Endeavour traveling 8,000 miles per hour, almost 300 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, putting on a light sky show.
Houston, single engine, Ops 3.
Endeavour, single engine, Ops 3.
Endeavour lighting up the eastern seaboard as it heads uphill for the International Space Station and a docking on Friday afternoon, now traveling 8,800 miles per hour, 68 miles in altitude, maintaining its altitude but beginning to pick up additional speed for main engine cutoff at the 8.5-minute mark into the flight. Endeavour's computers now commanding the main engines to swivel again, enabling the shuttle to roll to a heads-up position above its large fuel tank.
Houston, single engine Zaragoza, 104.
Endeavour, single engine Zaragoza, 104.
That call from Capcom Jim Kelly indicating that if we lost 2 main engines at the moment, we could still reach transoceanic abort targets in Spain.
Endeavour is pressed to Miko.
And now we have enough inertia to make main engine cutoff at normal orbital targets in the event of an engine failure. However, all 3 main engines continue to fly flawlessly. Endeavour now flying on top of its external fuel tank, gaining more favorable communications with the tracking and data relay satellite system. Endeavour 500 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, traveling almost 12,000 miles per hour.
Endeavour Houston, single engine press, 104.
Endeavour, single engine press, 104.
Guidance officer here in Mission Control reports main engine cutoff will occur at the 8-minute 26-second mark into the flight, a little more than a minute from now. Endeavour's main engines shortly will be throttled down once again to limit the stress on the shuttle and its 7 crew members to that of 3 times the effect of gravity. Endeavour currently traveling at a speed of more than 4 miles per second. Endeavour traveling now 23,000 feet per second as the engines begin to throttle back slowly. We're about 25 seconds away from main engine cutoff. Endeavour some 780 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. Standing by for main engine cutoff, to be followed a few seconds later by the separation of Endeavour's external fuel tank. Booster officer reports a good main engine cutoff. Endeavour now in its preliminary orbit.
Endeavour Houston, the upjet is R4U, no action required. Nominal MECO, ohms 1, not required.
Copy, R4U, no action. Ohms 1 is not required. Thanks, Vegas.
A perfect climb to orbit for the Shuttle Endeavour and its 7 crew members. The Expedition 4 crew, Yuri Anufrienko, Dan Birch, and Carl Walls, have begun more than 5 months in space. Endeavour now has jettisoned its large external fuel tank, which provided the liquid fuel for its 8.5-minute climb to orbit. The crew now will begin its post-insertion activities, which will last for the next several hours.
Endeavour Houston, after the dump is complete, you can run 3-2 and 3-3 as written. Hold on APU hide shutdown for Mark, and still ET photo and tail only control or no-go.
Space, we copy. We'll hold off on the APU hide shutdown, and we copy the no-go on the ET photo and no-go on tail only control.
Good copy, Endeavour.
This is Mission Control Houston. Here in the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room, the Ascent team of flight controllers, which has been on console since 10:30 this morning, led by Flight Director Leroy Kane, having an opportunity to catch their breath at the moment after a flawless climb to orbit by the Shuttle Endeavour. The 17th flight of Endeavour to orbit. Endeavour's launch coming 3 years and 1 day after it was launched on the STS-88 mission to begin the assembly of the International Space Station, carrying to orbit with it the Unity connecting node, the module that was mated to the already orbiting Zarya control module. On console, on the far right of your screen, is Leroy Kane, the Ascent Flight Director, joined by a covey of flown pilots for the Space Shuttle. Jim Kelly, seated just to the right of Kane, is the capsule communicator talking directly to the crew aboard Endeavour. To his right, shuttle pilot Mark Polansky, who was the pilot on the STS-98 mission back in February that brought to the International Space Station the Destiny Laboratory. And to his right, on the far left of your screen, astronaut Charlie Hobaugh, who was the pilot aboard Atlantis back in July that delivered the airlock Quest to the International Space Station on the STS-104 mission.
Endeavour Houston for Mark, you have a go for APU hide shutdown as written on 3-3.
Roger, go for APU hide shutdown.
This is Mission Control Houston. Pilot Mark Kelly on board Endeavour, given the green light by Mission Control to shut down the auxiliary power units, the 3 hydraulic power units aboard Endeavour that governed all of the aerosurface performances for the orbiter during its 8.5-minute ride to orbit. Those APUs will not be reactivated until the day before landing for the flight control system checkout and, of course, for controllability of the shuttle during its high-speed return to Earth, now scheduled for the early afternoon hours of December 16th.
Houston, Endeavour, APU hide shutdown complete.
Copy, APU hide shutdown complete. Thanks, Mark. Endeavour Houston for Dom, we're showing a preliminary ohms 2 of 37:41. We're evaluating whether we need to update your targets for you. We'll let you know. We're about a minute and a half from spreading. We'll be unable to talk to you then for about a minute, and you are go for Ops 105 when you get there.
Vegas, we are there. We're going to pro the Ops 105, and we copy the spreading and preliminary time of 37:41. Thanks.
Good copy, Endeavour.
This is Mission Control Houston, down the hall from the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. The team of flight controllers overseeing operations on board the International Complex, as they do 24 hours a day, continuing to watch over the work and activities of the Expedition 3 crew, Commander Frank Culbertson, pilot Vladimir Dezhurov, and flight engineer Michael Turin. On console at this hour in the International Space Station Flight Control Room on the right side of your picture, Flight Director Jeff Hanley. He is joined on console over in the Station Flight Control Room by veteran astronaut Bob Kirby. The crew listened to the launch of Endeavour just a few minutes ago in real time, and Frank Culbertson reported back that he was delighted that his replacements were en route for a docking to the International Space Station on Friday afternoon. This is Mission Control Houston. Now 19 minutes into the flight of Endeavour on a planned 11-day mission to deliver the new trio of residents to the International Space Station and more than 3 tons of logistical supplies. We're going to be returning now to the Kennedy Space Center for replays of the launch this afternoon of Endeavour.
For Houston, for Dom, your onboard targets are good, including the TIG. You can burn the onboard. You are go to load. Break for Mark. You are go on page 3-5 as written.
Vegas, we copy all. Mark's swapping his helmet to a headset, and we'll put all that in work.
Again, we're going to be switching back now to the Kennedy Space Center for replays of this afternoon's launch, a flawless launch by Endeavour to kick off the 6th and final shuttle mission of the year.
Houston, Endeavor, MPS power down, isolation, and GH2 inerting are complete, and ET umbilical door closure in work.
Houston copies. Mark, we'll be watching.
Houston, Endeavor, ET umbilical door closure is complete. Holmes burn prep in work.
Endeavor, Houston, we copy that. Mark, and you guys are also go for the maneuver.
Roger, go for the maneuver.
Endeavour Houston for Dom with some words on ohms 2 when you're ready.
Vegas, go ahead for ohms 2.
Dom, we show you with good targets and a good maneuver to attitude, and we show the steps complete pending the burn card steps. We're going to be swapping over to TDRS Z here in about 2 minutes. In case we don't pick you up on TDRS Z, you're a go for the ohms 2 burn per the card. And if we never pick you up on TDRS Z, we'll see you on the far side at an MET of 5.1 on TDRS West.
Vegas, we copy all 5-1 if we don't get TDRS. Thanks.
This is Mission Control Houston at a mission elapsed time of 32 minutes into the flight of Endeavour. A perfect launch from the Kennedy Space Center this afternoon at 4:19 p.m. Central Time, 5:19 Eastern Time. You're continuing to watch launch replays from the Kennedy Space Center of this afternoon's climb to orbit by the Shuttle Endeavour and its 7 crew members. Commander Dom Gorey, pilot Mark Kelly, mission specialists Dan Tawney and Linda Godwin, and the Expedition 4 crew, Yuri Anufrienko, the Russian commander, and American flight engineers Carl Walls and Dan Bursch, who are setting out on a 5.5-month mission aboard the International Complex. That last call from spacecraft communicator Jim Kelly here in the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room, indicating to Commander Dom Gorey aboard Endeavour that we may have some ratty communications over the next few minutes, but that he has a go for the orbital maneuvering system burn, the ohms 2 burn, as it is called, less than 5 minutes from now. That will begin to refine Endeavour's orbit and continue to refine its path toward the International Space Station, with docking scheduled just a few minutes after 2 p.m. Central Time on Friday afternoon. Here in Mission Control, the propulsion officer and the guidance, navigation, and control officer all report back to Ascent Flight Director Leroy Kane that everything is in readiness for the firing of the orbital maneuvering system engines about 3 minutes and 20 seconds from now. Again, that will further refine a highly elliptical orbit that Endeavour is currently traveling in to a less elliptical orbit, and will be the first in a series of engine firings over the next 45 hours or so to bring Endeavour to its docking to the International Space Station on Friday afternoon. Less than 2 minutes away now from the ohms 2 burn, the orbital maneuvering system engine firing. which will last about a minute and 49 seconds in duration.
Show you guys in a good config for ohms 2.
Vegas, we copy the good config. Thank you.
That engine firing again comes with Endeavour currently traveling at an altitude of about 143 by 124, 143 by 36 statute miles. This ohms 2 burn will have the net effect of reducing the highly elliptical nature of that orbit. Other rendezvous maneuvers, one burn of which is scheduled before the crew goes to sleep later this evening, will have the effect of increasing the altitude on Endeavour, the first of several such engine firings between now and the time of docking to the International Space Station on Friday afternoon. This is Mission Control Houston. The propulsion officer here in Mission Control reports that the ohms 2 burn is currently in progress. This burn of about 1 minute 40 seconds in duration, designed to further refine Endeavour's orbit in the early stages of its 11-day mission. Again on console, leading the Space Shuttle Flight Control Team, the Ascent Flight Director Leroy Kane, the second from the right in your field of view. To his right is Spacecraft Communicator Jim Kelly, joined on console this afternoon by Mark Polansky and Bill Oefelein.
Endeavour Houston, we show a good burn, no trim required. We'll meet you on page 5-2.
Thanks, Vegas. Vegas, we copy good ohms 2.
Spacecraft Communicator Jim Kelly reporting back to Dom Gorey aboard Endeavour that the Orbital Maneuvering System engine burn to refine Endeavour's orbit to a virtually circular orbit now has been completed in successful fashion. Endeavour now traveling at an altitude of 143 by 140 statute miles above the Earth. Again, coming up before the crew goes to sleep, about 3 hours from now will be the first in a series of rendezvous burns called the NC-1 burn. That is a course correction burn that will increase Endeavour's altitude, leading towards a docking to the International Space Station on Friday.
Vegas, go ahead.
Dom, the first one is, in case you guys want to set a countdown timer, the NH burn, which is coming up, is going to be at an MET of 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Vegas, we copy at 3:15. We'll do NH.
Good copy on that, and obviously we may tighten that up as we get closer. The other thing is, Dom, at your convenience, we'd like to get a debris report on the front windows.
Vegas, we saw a half a dozen 1 to 2 inch splotches on ascent, and we'll give you a better report here when we get our first sunrise.
Sounds good, Dom. No hurry on that. Thanks.
Commander Dom Gorey aboard Endeavour reporting only a few splotches on the windows. That is typical of a post-ascent debris report that is common to all Space Shuttle post-insertion procedural time frames. Also, the report of the so-called NH burn, that is the first in the sequence of rendezvous burns, a height adjustment burn that will increase Endeavour's altitude toward the International Space Station, planned at a mission elapsed time of 3 hours and 15 minutes. That will be about 2.5 hours from now, around 7:30 p.m. Central Time. Again, here in the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room, as was the case down at the Kennedy Space Center, a great deal of mindfulness of the time of the year as well as recent events around the world since September 11th and the attacks on America. Here in the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room, a series of baseball caps as well as baseball caps that are in the Space Station Flight Control Room on the Flight Director and Capcom consoles that have been donated by Mayor Rudolph Giuliani's office in New York, from the Fire Department of New York, the New York City Office of Emergency Management Services, and the New York Police Department. These baseball caps to remain on console at the Flight Director's console in both the Space Shuttle and Space Station Flight Control Rooms, symbolic of those who lost their lives in the September 11th attacks on America. Also being carried aboard Endeavour, 6,000 small 4-inch by 6-inch U.S. flags that will be agency presentation items after the flight, as well as a large United States flag that was recovered from the rubble of the World Trade Center in New York after the attacks on New York City on September 11th. Also a large ceremonial U.S. Marine Corps color flag that flew on the Pentagon on September 11th, and a large U.S. flag that flew at the state capitol in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania on September 11th. All of those items being flown aboard Endeavour as commemorative items on this flight, the first space shuttle flight since the attacks on America back on September 11th. Endeavour also carrying 23 New York City police officer shields, 91 New York City police officer patches, and a large flag from the New York City Fire Department.
RCS post-burn reconfig complete, and the MPS LH2 vacuum inerting and manifold press checkout are in work.
Houston copies, Mark. We'll be watching. Thanks.
Again, down the hall from the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room and the International Space Station Flight Control Room, a separate team of flight controllers on duty at this hour, led by Flight Director Jeff Hanley, along with spacecraft communicator Bob Kirby. They've been talking to Commander Frank Culbertson on board the International Space Station and his crewmates. At the moment, you can see the New York City Police and Fire Department and Office of Emergency Management caps on their console as well. They're in a period of a loss of communications right now with the International Space Station. The crew on board the ISS, currently in their 117th day in space, heard the launch of Endeavour live as it occurred just 45 minutes ago. Frank Culbertson responding that he was delighted that the Expedition 4 crew, the replacements, the new resident crew soon to arrive at the International Space Station to replace himself, Vladimir Dezhurov, and Michael Turin, were in fact safely on their way for a docking on Friday afternoon.
LH2 vacuum and nerding and the manifold press checkout are complete.
Endeavour Houston, Mark, we copy that, and you guys are go for 106, and following that, we'll meet you in post-insertion.
Houston Endeavour, we're going to put post-insertion block 1 in work.
Endeavour Houston, Dom, we copy, and we'll follow you along.
This is Mission Control Houston at a mission elapsed time of 52 minutes into the flight of Endeavour. On board, the crew is in the process of moving into their post-insertion timeline of activities. They are still in their launch and entry suits, and will remain so until they get a go for orbital operations from Ascent Flight Director Leroy Kane at about the same time as the payload bay door opening is scheduled, that planned for about 35 minutes from now. Down at the Kennedy Space Center.
Endeavor, if you like to end that, we'll do an off-mode recall and contract the set.
Endeavor Houston, Dom, you have a go.
Down at the Kennedy Space Center, we're setting up for the post-launch news conference coming up sometime within the next 20 minutes, we believe, with Launch Integration Manager Jim Halsell and Launch Director Mike Leinbach, who presided over the liftoff of Endeavour on the 6th and final shuttle mission of the year. That launch, again, occurred at 4:19 p.m. Central Time, 5:19 Eastern Time, right as the launch pad 39B at the Kennedy Space Center rotated into the correct plane and trajectory of the same path as the International Space Station was flying in. The space station at the time of launch was located over the Arabian Sea, due west of the southern coast of India. About 35 minutes after launch, Commander Dom Gorey and pilot Mark Kelly fired the orbital maneuvering system engines for about a minute and 49 seconds to close the elliptical nature of Endeavour's orbit. Endeavour currently orbiting at an altitude of 143 by 138 statute miles. Coming up in about 2 hours and 20 minutes will be the first in a series of rendezvous burns that will be executed by Gorey and Kelly. This a so-called NH1 burn, a height correction burn to increase Endeavour's altitude as it refines its path toward the International Space Station for a docking on Friday afternoon. That docking scheduled with the International Complex at around 2:04 p.m. Central Time. That will signal the arrival on board the International Space Station of Expedition 4 Commander Yuri Onufrienko and flight engineers Carl Walls and Dan Birch, who have set out on a 5+ month stay in space aboard the International Outpost. They'll be returning to Earth next May.
Houston Endeavor, if you like to end that, we'll go dual G2 to Ops 2.
Endeavor Houston, we're ready.
This is Mission Control Houston here in the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room. Ascent Flight Director Leroy Kane, Spacecraft Communicator Jim Kelly, and the team of Ascent Flight Controllers remain on console at this hour in the early stages of the post-insertion timeline, reconfiguring computers and onboard software for the on-orbit operations for the Endeavour crew over the next 11 days. Endeavour successfully launched from the Kennedy Space Center 1 hour ago. A flawless climb to orbit, streaking to the northeast of the Kennedy Space Center into a sunset sky, lighting up the sky on the 6th shuttle flight of the year, reaching orbit 8.5 minutes later, an orbit that was highly elliptical in nature, now slightly refined to a more circular orbit through the firing of the orbital maneuvering system engines shortly after launch. The next engine firing to occur 2 hours and 15 minutes from now. At about 7:34 p.m. Central Time, that will be a height adjustment burn, the first in a series of rendezvous maneuvers that will increase Endeavour's altitude and refine its path heading to the International Space Station for a docking just after 2 p.m. Central Time on Friday afternoon.
And then I also have
Roll skyward using our station in space.
Well, the heads down, wings level position, the proper azimuth for the 8.5-minute ride to orbit. "30 seconds into the flight, Endeavour's 3 liquid fuel main engines now throttling back in a 3-step fashion to 72% of rated performance, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound.
T-minus 15 seconds. 12, 10, 9, 8. We have a go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, pushing our goals skyward using our station in space.
Houston now controlling the flight of Endeavour.
Roll program. Roger, roll, Endeavour.
Endeavour into the roll, placing the shuttle in a heads down, wings level position, the proper azimuth for the 8.5-minute ride to orbit. "30 seconds into the flight, Endeavour's 3 liquid fuel main engines now throttling back in a 3-step fashion to 72% of rated performance, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier. Endeavour already 3 miles downrange, 4.5 miles in altitude, losing weight as it heads uphill.
Endeavour, Houston, go at throttle up.
Endeavour copies, go at throttle up.
The throttle up call from Capcom Jim Kelly, acknowledged by Commander Dom Gorey aboard Endeavour. Gorey joined on the flight deck by pilot Mark Kelly, flight engineer Dan Tawney, and mission specialist Linda Godwin. The The Expedition 4 crew, Russian Commander Yuri Anufrienko and American flight engineers Dan Bursch and Carl Wall seated down on the middeck. Booster officer reports good solid rocket booster separation, 33 miles downrange, 31 miles in altitude, guidance now converging, endeavors onboard computers commanding the main engine nozzles to gently swivel, aiming the shuttle for a precise keyhole in space for main engine cutoff.
Hello. How are you? Sure, this is Bobby Rebell at Instanet in New York, getting ready for the World Markets Briefing program. Good, how are you? Good to hear that. Okay. I'm not. Too much to do. I know. A lot going on here in New York today, guys. It's been interesting. What? Yeah, the big meeting is now. I will. I don't think I'll know till tomorrow, really. I'll keep you guys posted. Great. Well, there is definitely a mood of optimism on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange these days. Certainly the last couple days, the feeling that there's a lot of cash on the sidelines that is going into the market. So we're optimistic we'll be able to stay above those key benchmark levels, 10,000 on the Dow, 2,000 on the NASDAQ. But of course, anything can happen in these markets. The big thing people will be watching for before the markets open in the U.S. For Thursday's session will be the weekly jobless claims number, which are getting increasing attention as the unemployment rate has risen. They're expected to come in, according to a Reuters survey, at 469,000 jobless claims for the week. That's down from 488 in the previous week. The other number before the market opens, after the market opens, is factory orders for October. They're expected to be up 6.3% from down 5.8% in September. And of course, we are still looking ahead to the big Friday monthly employment report for November. That's expected to rise to 5.6% from 5.4% in October. Retailers also on the calendar for Thursday, a number of them reporting same-store sales. Big names like Walmart, Sears, The Gap, all will be reporting numbers, so that will be interesting to watch. One note in the after-hours session, Dan, the Washington Post, which publishes the paper by that name, and also Newsweek, coming out saying they expect results to improve in 2002 from the current year, cautioning that, of course, saying that that is unless the ad market worsens. So that will be an interesting company to keep an eye on in tomorrow's session as well. Back to you in Tokyo. Thank you. Yeah, bye.